Welcome. I'm Michael Bickert. Thanks for joining me today as we explore concepts with the objective of improving your management skills and growing your business. Now, I want you to grab a pen and a notepad because I'm certain today you're going to want to take notes. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link in the description to some notes, to some of the questions that I'm going to ask, so you'll have that handy, but you may take some other notes, and I want you to commit to yourself that you will jot down some sort of action item that you will implement in your business today. That's what this is all about. I want you to implement things to drive your business forward. Are you familiar with this expression this quote that is often attributed to Albert Einstein, where the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results? I've heard this said another way, which is if you keep on doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep on getting what you've been getting. And I'm here to ask you, are you happy with what you've been getting? If you're not happy with what you've been getting, you're going to need to change something. And so I don't think it's always obvious whether or not you should change your strategy. And that's the question I'm asking you to give to yourself today, to ponder today. And that is, should I stay the course or should I change something? Do I need to change my strategy? As I say, that's not always obvious, and I'm going to give you a bit of a guideline today, some questions that you can reflect upon, and I think I've got about 10 questions. So in 10 or less questions, can you figure out whether or not you should stay the course that you're on, or do you need to change something? So let's get started. The first question should be an obvious one, and that is, are you happy with your current state? Are you happy with your outcome, the trajectory that you're on? You know, would you define where you are right now as successful? Are you getting what you hope to be getting? And if the answer to that question is yes, then maybe there's not going to be a lot of value in this video. I hope you'll tune in case there is, and stay tuned rather. But many of you would have to say, no, I would like something more. And so if the answer to the question is, are you currently achieving the level of success? Are you currently on your desired trajectory? Have you experienced the outcome you're looking for? If the answer to that is no, then you need to move on to question number 2. If the answer is yes, then stay the course. For goodness sake, you're doing something right, stay the course. The next question is one that you should be pondering on an ongoing basis, and that is, are you certain that you are offering sufficient value in the market? That is to say, is your product or your services that you are in business and trying to market, do they represent sufficient value? Do you have evidence of this in some way? The most obvious way would be, yes, people are engaging my business and I am generating revenues, or maybe I have at some point and they're down today, but yes, I have good reason to believe that I'm offering sufficient value. The answer to that question tells you where to go. If you're certain that you're offering good value, then we can move on to question number 3. If you do not know for certain, if you don't have sufficient evidence that the value of your product or services represents a good exchange in the marketplace, then we need to stop here, and that's where you should spend your time. And the answer to the prevailing question, the overarching question of should you stay the course or should you change something, you have to stop here. You have to make sure that you have sufficient value, and visit our video. We've got a long video, I think it's more than an hour, on how to look and what the 4 constituents of value are, and how to ensure that you are increasing value in the marketplace. Because without sufficient value, you're not going to achieve what you're trying to achieve in business. You're not going to trick people into doing business with you. So that's the second question. Question number 3 is, have you sufficiently defined what success looks like to you? Your objectives, that is, your desired state. Many of you haven't actually defined that. You need to define that. Maybe you are achieving a level of success that should be, lauded, you should congratulate yourself on it, but you may have the personality where you're never satisfied. You're always looking for more, and that's fine. But you need to spend some time to define what success looks like, what your desired state is. And that should be both on a personal level and a professional level. If you haven't, if the answer to this question is no, I haven't actually stopped and done that, then that's where you got to start. So, and that overarching question once again, should I stay the course? Not necessarily. We don't know for sure yet, because we're not sure whether or not you are successful because you haven't sufficiently defined it. Now, there might be something very obvious, like you're in danger of going out of business, you're not profitable, something along those lines, where you can say just, without much planning, you can tell yourself, well, I know I'm not achieving the level of success that I hope to. But still, the answer to the question of should I stay the course or change strategy, you need to change strategy if your answer to question number 3 is no, I have not sufficiently defined success and my desired state. And you need to do that next. Okay, once you do that, we can move, or if you've already done that, we can move on to question 4. Have you created a concise plan and documented it that is designed to take you to your desired state, to accomplish your objectives, to help you reach the level of success that you desire? And this plan should be replete with deadlines and taking advantage of RACI. It should have all the action items. It should have short-term goals that lead to long-term goals. And you should be dating things, and for goodness sake, measure, measure, measure. You need to be measuring everything. Have you got a plan like that? And if the answer is no, then you got to stop here. That's what you have to do next. That will be your homework assignment. That's where you have to spend some time. If the answer to this question is yes, you do have this plan, it's well documented, you've spent sufficient time on it, you've got action items, you know what you should be doing daily, and you know when those items need to be completed by, and you're measuring these things, then we can move on to question 5. Perhaps intuitively, question 5 is, are you consistently, with great discipline, completing those action items that you highlighted in your plan within the allotted time frame, within the deadline? And if not by the deadline, are you extending your deadline and making sure that you are consistently, with great discipline, completing the action items within a reasonable time? If the answer to that question is no, I'm not, well, I think we found our problem. And you need to start doing that. You've taken all the time to put a good plan together. The next step, of course, is to start implementing those action items. And of course, everyone on the team, all your stakeholders, are completing these action items if you've used the RACI method. And if you don't know what I'm referring to there, make sure you watch our video. Everything I reference, we've got another video on, and you can get more information on that. But the degree to which you are implementing your plan should be an indication to you of whether you need to change something or not. So let's go back to our overarching question. Should I stay the course, or do I need to change something? If your answer to this question is no, if I'm honest with myself, I'm not consistently, with great discipline, executing the plan and completing my daily action items, or someone else on my team is not doing that. If the answer is yes, we can move on. But if the answer is no, this is where we have to start. And you should change your strategy, which means you need to put the discipline in place. All right, let's move on to question number 6. Do you have someone or something in place to hold you accountable to the accomplishment of your daily tasks, your action items, the implementation of your plan? If the answer to that is no, again, I believe we've stumbled across the problem here. So maybe on the previous question you said, no, I'm not really that disciplined. I'm not completing these things, or there are people on my team that aren't consistently completing their actions on time. Then it comes back to accountability, and the question for number 6 has to do with accountability. Who is holding people accountable? And if you are the main person who's failing to accomplish your objectives, because these are big things that the boss needs to do, that the visionary needs to accomplish, who is holding you accountable? We have our VIPs group. If you don't have somebody that's close to you that can hold you accountable, other stakeholders, your team, a business partner, a spouse, somebody like that, then please join our VIPs group and we will hold you accountable. We will get you to let us know what it is that you intend to accomplish, and you'll set your own goals, but we'll be here to make sure and hold your feet to the fire that you accomplish that. You need some sort of mechanism for accountability. If not, it's where you have to, if you don't have that, this is where you got to start. This is where you have to stop the process of asking these questions and say, okay, well, I think I have found our problem. If you do have somebody holding you accountable and you are accomplishing those things, let's move on to question number 7. What significant changes, if any, have occurred since you began to implement your plan? Since the time that you documented this plan and you put your deadlines in place and your action items, what significant changes have occurred? Maybe in the market, in your organization, in your industry. You have to ask yourself about these significant changes, and they're different from one business to another, of course, and from one geographical location to another, from one industry to another. But oftentimes the plan did not foresee these conditions, and you may be not sufficiently planned to take those into consideration. So you have to ask yourself and stop here and start brainstorming. What, if any, changes have taken place? Now, I'm saying significant changes. There's always changes. There's going to be changes that'll take place continuously. But are they significant enough that maybe you should be altering your plan? Are they significant enough that your plan did not take them into consideration and that we've stumbled across where the issue is? Ask yourself that. Brainstorm, write these things down. Maybe there's new technologies that are affecting your industry. Maybe your competition is by and large doing things a little bit differently from how you are. Maybe your supply chain and certain raw materials, ingredients, supplies that you need are no longer available in the quantity they once were, and in order to get the value to your customers that you've been historically delivering, you are now in a struggle because of the change to the supply chain. You got to ask yourself these questions. What about staff? Is there somebody very significant that you've turned over on your staff that was really responsible for delivering on your objectives, and now that person's gone and you haven't replaced that person with somebody who you can rely on? Ask yourself that. Brainstorm these things. This is where, if the answer to this question is yeah, there are a few significant things and they're not planned for, they would affect things, and the conditions of the business are changed significantly, then you know where we got to go next. By the way, if the answer is there are no changes, no significant changes that you can think of, then we can skip over question number 8. But assuming there is something significant, then we move on to question number 8, which is, how have these changes impacted the plausibility of implementing your plan as outlined? Ask yourself that, and that'll help you with the next step, which of course will be to redesign the plan, redocument a new plan that allows for those changes. Another part of number 8, sort of, let's call it 8B, would be, are these changes which you thought about in question number 7, are these significant changes within your control? Are they within your circle of influence? And I call it 8B. It's not a standalone question because, what you do with that information is important, but it probably doesn't impact whether or not you need to do something. You have to do something if there's been some significant changes. But if they are changes that are outside of your circle of influence, outside of your control, the first thing that I'm going to advise you is to not worry about them, not focus on them too much. You have to be aware of them, but you're not going to stress over them because they're outside of your control. They're outside of your circle of influence. There's nothing you can do about it. So it won't be useful in any way, shape, or form. Of course, the flip side to the answer to this question is important, because if they are within your circle of influence and they are within your power to change, then that's really liberating and empowering. You're going to realize, oh yeah, there have been some significant changes, such as the example I gave where maybe there's a technology that has changed and you have access to that. Maybe you want to explore that and evaluate bringing that technology on, or maybe there's somebody in your organization, in my other example, that you lost, that you turned over, and you didn't do a good job of replacing that person, and now you can focus there. So to the degree that these things are within your control and your circle of influence, then we want to implement our new plan. We want to include changes and actions to deal with those things which are within our control. Let's move on to question number 9. As should be super obvious by now, question number 9 is, have you taken the time to adapt your plan for these unforeseen conditions, for these significant changes that are impacting your business? And you could see that was coming. That's an obvious one, but it's one that most business owners have not taken the time to do. It's like they're so busy, small business owners in particular are so busy with the day-to-day working in their business that they haven't taken enough time to work on their business. And that comes back to that, that vision that you have, and the planning and the organizing of your resources so that you can leverage your resources to the greatest extent possible. So have you done that? Have you taken those changes, those significant changes under advisement, and have you adjusted your plan in order to make sure that you can plausibly implement the day-to-day action items that are born of your plan? If the answer to that question is no, then of course, going back to our overarching question, do I need to stay the course or do I need to change strategy? The answer is, of course, you need to change strategy. You need to stop here and you need to work on your plan. You need to incorporate those changes into your plan. But if the answer is yes, I have actually readjusted my plan, or you take the time to do it now and the answer becomes yes, then we can move on to our last question, which is question number 10. And that question is, have you allowed for sufficient time to pass in order for your desired state to come to fruition? Is success really, are you on the trajectory towards success, but you just haven't allowed for enough time? Perhaps your plan and your deadlines, that's where the adjustments were necessary, is that you were, remember, this is projections. When we plan, we're projecting, and there's some guesswork involved. They're educated guesses, and that's why we need to measure and tweak. But have you allowed for sufficient time to pass? I'll often spend at the beginning of each year time on projections for what we expect in terms of revenues and expenses and these types of things, and net profitability for the year ahead. And maybe you're planning out for 5 years and so on. But the more information you get, you need to adjust your plan, you need to adjust your projections, and often what it is your time frame. You might be well on the path to accomplishing what you hope to accomplish, but it's just going to take longer time. So if the answer to question number 10 is no, sufficient time hasn't passed, I am actually making progress, it's just not as fast as I hoped for, then maybe the answer is you should probably stay the course. There might be some really minor changes that you can make that will bring about greater results, but I would be very reluctant to make major changes if you are experiencing improvement. So what you would look to is your history, and you'd look to your competition to ascertain whether or not the improvements you're making are significant enough. And if they are, then you want to stay the course. A lot of people don't realize that, or they think about their projections and their path to success, path to their desired state as linear. And that's just not the way business typically works. That's not the way most things in life work. There is a bit of an exponential component to your trajectory. So you may be experiencing improvement in very small increments at first, and then they start to gain momentum and speed up with economies of scale, with the greater leverage that comes with the scale of your business. Those types of things are able to ramp up production and ramp up the speed at which you will start to experience growth. And so if your projections and your deadlines and all of those dates surrounding where you'd hope to be are linear, give some consideration to that. It's not necessary that you have to go back and change everything. You may still, within, say, your 10-year plan or your 5-year plan, hit that original mark, even though you're not pacing for it currently, because of this maybe exponential and sometimes parabolic nature of the improvement and the growth pattern for success in your business. So make sure you keep that in mind. So those are the 10 questions, and I wanted to provide you with this framework because I'll often get questions from clients and from staff about trying to accomplish certain objectives, trying to accomplish, their definition of success. And it's very common for us in business to ask ourselves, do I need to change something? And the answer is almost yes, there's something you can change, but should I be changing something significant? Do I need to make a pivot, as they call it? Do I need to really change a lot, something very significant? Or do I just need to make some minor tweaks? And that's a healthy discussion to have, and this is what this framework is designed to help you with. Go back over these questions, because often it's one of these answers. One of these questions will provide you the answer and the guidance of where you should go. Some of the simple, very intuitive things that you should be doing, you're not doing, and that's very much the case. Don't beat yourself up about it, just change that, because small and medium-sized business owners, even large businesses, are guilty of this. They don't go back to the basics and the foundations and ask simple questions. And the answers to these questions often come back to the planning and just adjusting slightly for changes, maybe implementing some measurements, some accountability, those types of things. I won't go through all the list again, but this is where you're going to find the answer to, should I stay the course or should I really change my strategy? I hope you found that interesting. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you will implement something in your business today that will get you back on that path to success if you're not currently achieving it. Leave some comments that we can all learn from, because we need to learn from one another. Perpetual refinement.